again, and welcome to Media War Stories Behind the Scenes Tales from the Front Lines of the Media. I'm your host, Tom Curley. How the hell are you today? Well, it's been a busy week, it's been a busy month. Time has become completely distorted. It's going by, a day is a month. And we just have to talk about all this. And of course, we have to talk about it with this dude, the amazing Mr. Gary Armstrong. Gary, how are you today? As we're recording
Uh,
this, it is
we have a
post
timing
debate.
thing here. We should say right at the top of our podcast that this our shows normally air sometime after the events that we talk about in the show, and it gets a bit awkward. So we both agreed before going on the air that uh, we really need to talk about what will be last night's and so far the first and perhaps the only presidential debate. We need to talk about that. And if it sounds old to the people watching it, we apologize, but we can't ignore what happened last night. And in the answer to your question, my stomach, and I don't know that we can blame the debate on this. My stomach feels like I've eaten too many White Castle hamburgers at this point. I'm dealing with the excess tooth thing and my
Oh,
friggin'
that's right.
cochlears.
Yeah.
So I have dizziness and a lot of other stuff. But I'm sitting here with a mic, and this always makes me feel better. You should send me a medical bill for making me feel better. So we have a lot to talk about vis-a-vis what happened
Yes,
last night. And
we
rather
most
than
assuredly
dive
do.
into the candidates, I want to go after the media because there were a lot of things that happened last night that the people covering it, whether they were local or network, they were acting as if they had never seen or heard anything like this before. It's everything is in terms of history for those covering these stories for us. Everything is what happened in the last 24 to 48 hours, days, weeks. There's no sense of, hey, maybe something like this happened a few years back, and you could thread your needle and see where the similarities are. It didn't happen last night. And I personally now, I feel embarrassed because I know both you and I, when we broke into the uh, the big show or the big leagues, as they call it, at the network reporting level, we were given lessons as to having a sense of history and making sure your pieces had that relevance so that you're not saying, 300 people were killed in the Middle East today and what's going on? Nothing like this has ever happened before. We were taught not only to tell the people what's happened, why it happened, who's involved, but what the relevance is. And that usually made it make sense instead of just giving you it leads, it leads. We give you relevance. That's what you're supposed to do. I didn't see much of that last night.
You're absolutely right. It's funny you bring back Dan Rather used to have a line that he said all the time. Every night, he would do a story and go now for context and perspective. And we used to laugh in the control room because he said it all the time and we knew it was coming. But he was right. I mean, he was absolutely
Yeah.
right. He would report a story and then he would put it in context with historical facts and give it some
Yeah.
perspective. And well, I watched it on MSNBC, and the the
Okay.
the post debate coverage was wonderful. Um, this was Look, we've seen a lot of debates, and in reality, does a debate move the needle? No. Well, no. Except the last one with Biden sort of moved the needle. He dropped out. I mean, think about it. If he didn't
Yes.
have that debate,
Right.
he would still be the candidate, and Trump, would still be like, I don't know, people. I still think he would have lost. But what you saw last night
Yeah.
was masterful. I mean, she cleaned his clock. She knew what she was doing.
Right from the first moment when they walked on stage, and she took the moment and walked over to him and gracefully shook his hand, smiled, and
His hand.
said, "I'm Kamala Harris." let's
Harris,
have a good show
nice
tonight.
to meet you.
And he just stood
Yes,
there.
and he had to shake her hand. And everybody
Yeah,
forgets. He had the when he was president, that horrible power move where when he would go to shake somebody's hand, he would grab them and then pull their hand, pull
right,
their hand, pull their hand,
right,
shake, 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 and they learned national foreign leaders learned very quickly to block that. You know,
right,
it's like when you shake hands with somebody, and I mean, I know we were raised, you have to have a hearty handshake, a firm handshake.
right.
Okay, fine. But, you get these guys, they shake hands and they're trying to crush your hand. And it's like, dude, seriously. But no, he was off track there. I told Ellen in literally the first time he talked, and the two box, you had him talking and you had her doing this.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
And I said, "Holy crap, she's won. She's won. That's it. It's over with." Because her facial expression
Yeah,
said everything. She didn't have to rebut. And then, she set him up. Uh, and of course, what I find fascinating is all the reporters going, hey, oh, all he had to do was not take the bait. And they all told him that, but he did it anyway. Guys, he can't
right.
not take the bait. That's his thing. When I get punched, I have to punch back 10 times harder. It's part of his
Yes.
illness. So when she went on
The
about his
schoolyard, the bully.
about
Yeah,
his about his about his crowd size, boom. And
yeah.
the thing was, they had teed up a question. I don't remember what the question was, but he could have used it to like dump on her. But no, all crowd size. My the biggest crowds ever. Nobody comes to your stuff. Nobody's leaving my, because it's true. It's
Yes.
his rallies are getting smaller. The people leave after an hour because they're exhausted. Or what? Another thing that people don't remember or notice is that he's always almost an hour late. So he's kept this crowd of people
Sure.
waiting for an hour. All right. And then he goes on for 90 minutes. Well, you know something? Maybe they got a babysitter. Maybe that, they'll lose interest. They give him about an hour and then they leave. You see the people behind him yawning and falling asleep. But I mean, it was masterful. And we just kept going, are what we are what we're seeing happening? I mean, again, how many times? All right, during the last 10 years, the word unprecedented has been used in an unprecedented amount of unprecedented times. The phrase, you know, the the phrase that's coming that I'm hearing that comes every day is pitch perfect. What she did was pitch perfect. Her campaign, her
Yes.
convention speech was pitch perfect. The way she's running this campaign is pitch perfect. And it is.
Yes.
I don't know who is running this or if she's a genius or whoever is writing this episode of reality. This is like the third act of the movie where the good guys finally start to get their act together and defeat, the evil Dr. Demento. No insult to Dr. Demento. I love him.
Don't forget to stay demented.
You're the one who said I love you true.
I think Tom, with what you just mentioned, I think one or more of Harris's campaign people have said to her, "Now listen, when you get into this, uh, you know, be very nice at the top, be polite, be dignified, and don't rush it. Just wait for it. Wait for it. When you throw something out, just wait for it, and don't try to go down the rabbit hole with him because you'll lose. So let him do all the damage, and that was all self-inflicted damage last night.
It did. She pushed back exactly when she needed to, and then you would go, why isn't she, fact checking him? And she goes, no, she's letting him giving up more and more rope. She's letting him hang himself. When your enemy is self-immolating, stand back and try not to get caught on fire. It was just a beautiful thing to watch. And then him being the gift
It was.
that keeps on giving. Oh, yes, the right wing are so livid because the moderators were so mean to him. They fact checked him. Now, in reality, they fact checked him twice. All right, maybe a third time. And
Yes.
what did they fact check him on? Excuse me, sir. Nobody is killing babies after they were born. Nobody is having an abortion after a baby is born. She said, sir, there's no, in all 50 states, it is against the law in all 50 states to kill an infant. Okay. And then the other one was, there are no viable reports that Haitian immigrants are eating your pets in Springfield, Ohio. To which everybody just went, what? Because
Whoa.
what?
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
I mean, now the sad part is that they're now doing reports. Haitian, there's a large Haitian immigrant community in
Right.
Springfield, Ohio. They were told that there were good jobs there and they were welcomed, and now they're scared. They're scared to death. They're scared that they're going to get
Yes.
killed.
We were talking as we began this particular conversation about how I've lost the phrase you tossed out before, but how unique was this? Uh,
Oh yeah,
the
it
word you
was.
use,
It
which
was.
I've forgotten because I'm a senior citizen,
Uh,
it's you find it in sports a lot, unprecedented. Somebody hits four home
yes,
runs or something like
unprecedented.
that, but there are a lot of people who have hit four home runs. If you can mention that and mention the player who had a great night hitting four home runs, it behooves you to say this is not the first time, and give a lot of support to the guy who did it tonight. But it behooves you as a reporter, sports reporter or whatever, to say this has happened before. You need to keep it in perspective. Didn't
Yes,
happen last
yes,
night.
perspective. And of course, you know, I knew the inevitable afterward. Oh my God, she cleaned his clock. This was a disaster. She absolutely dominated. She's fantastic. And then I'm sitting there with my wife Ellen, and I'm going, and wait for it, 3, 2, 1, and one of them will say, however, the polls are still. It's a close race. It's too close race. It's the closest race in history. Donald Trump just proved himself to be an absolutely incoherent, deranged, malignant narcissist who is saying that we can kill babies after they're born and that people are eating dogs and cats and stealing them, and yet he could still win. What the hell is wrong with this country, or more importantly, with the media's obsession with polls? Oh my God.
Yes.
I understand. Uh, you know what? I tell you, it was the advent of 24-hour news. Before
Yeah.
24-hour news, a group of people, you guys, you were the reporter, you had producers and writers and editors who would
Yes.
spend the
Yes.
day curating what was the important news stories, which you would then collect into a 1/2 hour program that you would put on every night. All right. And all the
Right.
networks did this. Okay. You didn't need polls. You didn't need any of this stuff. But when 24-hour news came along, it's very hard to fill 24 hours. All right. There just isn't enough staff to find 24 hours worth of
Right.
news.
Right.
There isn't a, and so when they're covering politics, the only metric that they have is a poll. And I am sorry, but and we've had this discussion before, so we're not going to go into it about how useless polls are. But I found out last night there is another thing that they do, which I think is more useless than a poll, and that is a focus group. All right. A
Oh,
focus
yes.
group. A
Yes.
focus
Yes.
group is six guys or women that you drug off the street. All right. And now
Right.
these six people's opinion somehow now reflects the entire country. Come on. And it's worse, it's the undecided voters. again, I rail at this every election cycle, and they had some doozies on MSNBC last night. One guy, he was practical. I mean, I don't know. He sounded like he was on drugs. I mean, like, well, I don't know. That, I guess I don't know. Well, I still can't decide.
Yeah.
And I go like, seriously, guys, okay. We have He-Man running for president and Skeletor. All right. Here's the undecided. Well, I don't know. I don't know. He-Man seems to have some good points, but Skeletor, he seems to be strong on, I don't know, something. Guys, come on.
Yeah, you mentioned focus groups, Tom. I'm sure you had, from your viewpoint, when you were working, you had to deal with them. Uh, they were nightmares for me as a reporter. Back in the '70s, when we were dealing with the racial issue of school busing, I'm losing my mind here. At some point, because of all of the, the varied comments we were getting from the public, who really thought that it was simply a racial issue. It didn't have anything to do with education. And some of these letters, and we didn't have email back then. Some of these letters were pretty dicey. So our powers that be decided we needed a focus group meeting to give us, the reporters, a clearer view of what was going on. I guess that meant that even though we were out in the various neighborhoods and dealing with the people who were pro or con and hearing them say what was on their mind and being really being aware of what their moods were, obviously the reporters didn't know what was going on. So we went into meetings with the focus groups. The first focus group I entered, let's say it was 73 or 74. I went into the room, and the first thing I immediately noticed, there were six of them. They were all white. They were all male. They had to be all over 50 at that point. And I said to myself, Gary, you have to behave yourself this time. And myself said, Gary, just sit down and listen. And I sat down and I listened. And what came out of the mouths of these six white guys were words and terms and lines that were completely at odds with what was going on in reality. They were saying things like, "Oh, black people and white people, they really, they don't like each other. It has nothing to do with education." And the reporters who are doing this, they're from the liberal media, and the people that we work with. And I came to find out that they were lying about where they came from. Bottom line is, as you mentioned, focus groups are worse than polls because then you're not focusing on anything except what the dogs leave outside. So why people would use focus groups, I think it's simply to shift blame to say you can say afterwards, well, we checked this out. We vetted ourselves. We had experts on the issue. And the experts they were talking about were the focus groups who were clueless. We have to.
Yep.
This is one of those issues where we're talking about it. We're too old news for it. We need some of the newer ones talking about what we're talking about.
Yes. There is a story, the Midas Touch Network. Shout out, those guys are great. Uh, Released. There was a town hall or a focus group that CNN did, and it turns out one of the guys was a Trump supporter, and he wasn't undecided. The reporter who did the focus group found this guy in a bar or a diner, and said, who are you voting for?" And he said, "Trump." And he said, "Well, come on this focus group. We're going to say you're undecided." And he went, So he went on the thing. And of course, he said he voted for Trump. And then afterwards, people found him and he said, yeah, I told him I was a Trump supporter. I'm still a Trump supporter. He's selling merchandise, Trump merchandise. And
Right.
this guy introduced him. Everybody here is undecided. He's no. And it's like, just stop this, because people believe this.
One of the things over the years, people would say something. when we were sent out to do what was called man on the street, and that's going out and getting 15 or 20 or 25 uh, different people responding to whatever the question of the day was. Um, and someone would say something like, Ted Kennedy, he's a nice guy, but look at his personal life and look at the family. They're their version of our royalty, and I don't think that they have a touch with. I don't think they're in touch with us. I don't trust them anyway. So, and then the interview would end, and at some point, I thought to myself, this was too good for me because it was a soundbite that would invite a lot of opposition. So it was good for me as a reporter serving up the hamburger meat for that newscast that day. But at some point while we were shooting, I thought to myself, what did I find out if this is really kosher? So I asked whoever it was, why did you just say that to me? And the person looked at me and looked back at me and said, Gary, I thought that's what you wanted me to say. And I said, you thought I wanted you to say that? Yeah, I wanted to say what you wanted me to say. And I also wanted to make sure that I would be on the air. I know you're doing a lot of sound bites. A lot of people are going to fall by the wayside, but I know I'm going to be on the newscast, and I'm calling my family and my friends to tell them to watch the news tonight because I'm going to be on the news. And that's why I told you what I told you. That's still happening.
Bingo. You answered the question that I was just about to ask. Thank you. People will do anything to be on television. There was an old,
Yes.
I don't know if it was Candid Camera or maybe it was some comedy show. And the gag was they went to a supermarket and they set up a big fancy camera and they would ask
Right.
people to taste this product and you know say how good it was, and this was going to be a national TV commercial. Okay, now the thing that they were giving them was, it was the vilest thing they could concoct. It was cod liver oil and clam juice and vinegar and
Ugh.
oh, it was vomit inducing, right? But every
Cod
one of them
liver oil.
would take that thing. They would take that thing and they would drink it and they would go, "It's great. Oh yeah, well I'd buy this." And it was person after person after person, and every single one of them. And then when they say, "Okay, we got to take," that's great, and they would say, "Oh my God, are you actually selling this stuff?" But because they thought they were going to be on television, they said what they thought the guy wanted to hear.
Yes. The late Tip O'Neill, and I know I've told the story about our relationship many times, but it bears repetition here. We were having one of our liquid lunches, and we were talking about politics. And, he was famous for his line, "All politics is local." That was his mantra, and he was right about that. And a lot of the candidates today should think about Tip O'Neill's mantra that all politics is local. But at any rate, Tip O'Neill, he's holding his drink in his hand, and he says, "Gary, the next round is on me if uh, if you can accurately answer this question." And I said, "Okay, I want to see your money on the table before I say anything." And he just starts laughing. But he said to me, "I saw that thing you did last night. What I want to know is, why do people say those things? Are they that angry? Do they really mean what they say?" And I said, "Tip, you can't repeat where you're hearing this or who told you this, but many of the people who wind up on the cutting room floor are people who tell it like it is. But because they tell it like it is, it's not as exciting as when they start ranting about something that they don't mean." And he said, "Wait a minute. Are you telling me that people don't necessarily say on television what they really mean?" And I said, "Listen to me, Chip. Watch my lips. Uh, they just want to be on TV." And he smiled and he said, "That's the same problem I have with my co-covers in the Senate. I reach across to the other aisle and I ask them a question and they just start ranting. I wait for them to stop ranting and then I ask them, why did you say that? I know you don't really mean that. I know you're not going after votes here." Why did you say that nonsense to me? And so Tip O'Neill said, the person he was talking to was kept looking around. He was looking for TV cameras, and he said back to Tip O'Neill, "Tip, you know this is politics. This is business. I don't see any TV cameras." And Tip said, "Well, what does that have to do with?" "Well, I have people back home who watch what I say and do." And Tip looked at me and said, "You guys are bastards." And I said, "Tip, where's the next drink?" And he just laughed. But to show you that this nonsense about people saying what they want, and it's not what they really want, not what they really believe. It winds up as a soundbite in somebody's report on somebody's network, and all of a sudden that stuff goes to the polls, it goes to the focus groups, and we honestly don't know what the truth is.
Exactly. Thank you. You have proven, because I was thinking when we were going to start this, is I got to ask Gary, like, did you ever deliberately try to find a man on the street that was saying a narrative that you were looking for or that the station was looking for? And we know that Fox does it, and probably,
Yeah,
maybe, they all do it, because again, everybody's forgetting
they all
that,
do it.
they all do it. And that, okay, it's news. We're supposed to be giving you the news, but it's
Yes,
really a show. Okay, you need to deliver
yes,
the audience. I mean, I hate to say it, but it was a guy named Vaughn. I'm blanking on his name. He was um, the executive producer for Dan Rather, one of the first ones, and he was the one that came up with the concept that the evening news had to have video moments. All right,
right,
moments. This was a big thing. We had to have a moment, and he
right.
he said we are not doing news. We are doing infotainment. All right. See, infotainment. It's entertainment that
Yes,
hopefully informs
yes.
you, but let's get real. It's going to inform you to whatever gets the most ratings for your audience.
We were told, I know we're running out of time, but we were told by more than one suit, more than one news director, so that doesn't seem like I'm focusing on one person or one place, one operation. We were told the worst sin you could do on the air as a news reporter is to be boring because you drag down our ratings. People will tune us out if they're bored by what you say. Now you have to have video to go with that. And I think I was bragging at one point, um, not that I ever brag, that when I started working in Boston, they were covering the state house stuff with whatever people said at the state house in hearings. And at a hearing, of course, they're just people testifying. It's just sound bites, and that's such an easy job to do if you don't take any pride in what you do for a living. You can just cover the hearing, have your photographer get you 10 sound bites, slice through that, and bring it in at 2 minutes or whatever, and your job is done. And what the veteran reporters were telling me, Gary, this is the easy way to get the job done. You cover the hearing in the morning, you rip off a stand up with the state house behind you, and you're done for the day. You can just tell the desk that you're still working. But this is no heavy lifting. And even as a younger reporter, then I thought, there's something wrong about that. And they were talking about the hearing happened to be about housing, the need for better housing, more affordable housing. And that's ironic if we were talking about that 50 years ago, but we were. And it occurred to me that if I took some of the better sound bites from the hearing and went to the neighborhood that was within the news story and just took B-roll video of the neighborhood, which showed the condition of the housing, and maybe get a couple of local people just to say what was on their mind, that would be more entertaining. Now, I would be using less of the State House video, uh, and it wouldn't be as informative as it should be, but it pleased the people that I worked for. When it first got through to my head that it's so much easier in my mind to show what the state house people are talking about, the politicians are talking about, that you could do your job twice as well by simply showing people this is what it looks like. And I would always butt heads with people who said, "We didn't tell you to do that. We told you to just stick to the sound don't bore the audiences. When you do these things with the video and it gets a little bit, it's not clear when you do these things. It isn't a yes or no. And people need to be educated. And what you're doing is just confusing them. So what the
Yep.
reporters are
Yep.
dealing with now, we've been dealing with this all our lives through the decades.
Yep. Yep. Through the decades. Well, we've done it again. Before we get to the plugs, I just want to note I've sort of come to an agreement with our AI program, the Chironomatic 2000 instantaneous graphics generator, which also has that deep fake AI module that was basically, they were basically driving us crazy for the last 3 weeks. Well, I did find a drop down menu. I did find a way to see when the AI is doing it. And unfortunately, I can't fire him. He's in a union, and I'm
Right.
I'm staunchly pro union. But you'll notice that there hasn't been any because I can see it. So basically, he's been busted. So hopefully, we won't have to worry about the deep fake silliness from this point
You
on.
need a focus
So
group
anyway,
meeting on this.
we should have a focus. That's right. Yes, a totally AI focus group. That's a great idea. Anyway, onto the plugs
Yes,
very,
they can
very
see clearly
quickly.
now.
They can see clearly now. The Serendipity Seeking Intelligent Life on Earth, Maryland's blog. It's great. We all contributed to it. A half-hour radio show for the best in half-hour radio shows. Voicescapes Audio Theater for the best in comedy, audio theater, comedy, and drama. My sister podcast, Get Off My Lawn, where we talk about life, the universe, and everything. And of course, Between Americans, a thing that I really think you should watch. It's very important. It's very relevant to today about what it's like to be an American. So on that note, F Demented, all I can say is see you next week. Bye.